Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depends upon where you are in the world. This is Bill Gustin with my dear friend, Captain Pete Williams.
Hi, everyone.
From Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Department. And the topic for today's Hangout is going to be preventing fire apparatus accidents. We have two special guests, Pete being one of them, and the other being Ed Collet, who brings a lot to the table when it comes to one of the most common fatal fire apparatus accidents, which is rollovers of tankers, tanker rollover. Before we begin our program today, I want to give a shout out to two people, or a company and a person. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Key. That's keyhose.com. Now, I also want to give a shout out to one of our panelists, Jason Hovelman, who wrote a most excellent article on preparing your crew and your apparatus for responding to fires. And it was in the July edition of Fire Engineering. Now, what does that have to do with Key Hose? It's got everything to do with Key Hose. Jason made a point in his article that if you are operating with an apparatus such as a quint that has a limited water supply, if you use a 3-inch line or larger to extend beyond the reach of a 200-foot pre-connected 1 3/4, what's going to happen is you're going to burn up a lot of water in your tank just filling the larger diameter hose. Now, there's textbooks. We've all read it. It used to be the cardinal rule is we don't exceed 300 feet of 1 3/4 hose. Those days are long gone. When you're operating with a hose, a premium hose like Key Combat Ready or their True ID, you've got a friction loss of 25 PSI per 100 feet. So let's say you stretch 500 feet of 1 3/4 hose, Key 1 3/4 Combat Ready hose. That's 5 times 25. That's 125 PSI friction loss, plus 50 for the nozzle. That's 175. Definitely achievable. Less people, less volume of water filling the hose, and we'll all make Dennis Laguerre happy because we will do away with the Y in the trunk line, and I'm sure that Daryl Liggins will pass on the good news to Dennis and have him watch when we archive this for this afternoon. I'm going to start with Pete. You tell us a little bit about yourself. And
Sure. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good to be here. Pleasure being on the Wednesday Google Hangout. Been looking forward to this. Bill introduced it about 4 weeks ago, and usually I'm not in on Wednesdays, but I came in just for this. I want to give you a little background on myself from a safety standpoint. This safety awareness started.
Hey, Bill, I'm not hearing your guest and your audio's shot.
We're not hearing you. Maybe I was
No,
in the Navy for about 10 years. I
That's
worked on 2 aircraft, and between the jets and the spinning part. So nothing. Bill, I'm not sure. Let's see
here.
this orientation. Is that any better?
well, no, you sound better now. We couldn't. Could you repeat your
Sure.
opening there? We couldn't hear any of it. Sorry.
Okay. So I'm saying, well, it's a pleasure being here. It's a pleasure being on the Wednesday Google Hangout. I've been looking forward to this. I think Bill mentioned it about 4 weeks ago, and normally I'm not on shift on Wednesdays, but I came in today just for this. So I just want to give you a little background on myself, mostly from a safety standpoint. and where that safety awareness started. I was a sailor in the Navy for about 10 years, and I was on the flight deck of 2 aircraft carriers working with aircraft, F-14s. So between the jets and the spinning props and the tie-down chains, safety was always job one. So after coming into the fire service, from a driving standpoint, I went ahead and got pretty much every driver's certification there is, every class of truck, whether it was just the rescue, heavy rescue, aerial, or tanker, or platform. So after that, I think I came over to the training division in 2017 as a driver instructor. Initially, when I looked around, it seemed that at the time, the focus was primarily on engine drivers, suppression drivers, the guys who operated the pump panel. There was a lot of refreshing going on from year to year, but it seemed that the rest of the department, including the guys who drive the rescues, since the initial evoc, there wasn't anything else to keep them refreshed. So I wanted to see, I did like an assessment study to see where we could actually make a difference. We had a defensive driver program. However, I wanted to look at something that was proactive. So I think after coming on in about the middle of 2017, there was an opportunity, there was a vacancy at the end of, I think, early January 2018 for a position on the crash review panel. So I said, well, this could help me put the two of it together. If I could get on the crash review panel, I could see firsthand the causes of what these accidents were and maybe the extent of preventability. So after doing that, I realized, well, I have more access to data. So I went back to look at numbers before 2017. I looked at 2016, and we had about 212 accidents. This is for rescues, this is for suppressions, and also including fleet and staff vehicles. We're looking at the guys who drive the vehicles for fire inspections. And so I saw 212, and then that was 2016. In 2017, when we started the program about midway, we got the number down from 212 to 190. So we made improvements initially right there. I think we saved maybe about a 10% reduction in accidents. Then moving further, for all of 2018, we got the numbers from 190 down to 155. So by just including the rescue drivers and making it available where we offered something, essentially it was like an evoc refresher. We were able to start having, I guess, all drivers, not just the guys who were the driver operators on the engines, but anyone who drove incidental to their duties could make a difference. Just paying more attention, having more situational awareness. So we've been, instrumental in keeping the numbers down. And overall, just the perception and the awareness of just knowing that the department cares about how individuals drive has really made a difference.
Pete, we're going to show some video that was taken by a drone of your driving course, which is modular. You can build the course depending upon how much space you have. And when we're showing the video, you can explain it to our audience. Our other special guest is Ed Collet. And we asked him to come on board because, as I had mentioned previously, one of the most common fatal fire apparatus accidents is a tanker, rural water supply tanker rollover. Ed, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, Bill. Thanks a lot for having me on today. I'm been in the fire service for 18 years now. I am one of the co-chairs for the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association Water Supply Technical Advisory Committee. And part of that is doing water supply training and safe operations in fill sites and dump sites. Because it's not just about on the road when we're driving to and from. There's actually been, fatalities, getting backed over, and also, falling off tailboards, things like that aren't actually out on the road. You mentioned that this is one of the biggest problems as far as apparatus crashes are the tankers. You know it's bad when there's a separate NIOSH and FEMA white papers on the topic of tanker crashes and rollovers. So this is when we do our instructions, it's kind of my big soapbox. There's really no reason we should be getting killed or injured driving tankers or any apparatus for that matter, and also endangering the public, which we're there to serve and protect. So
it is kind of ironic, Ed, that with all, I mean, you with our new apparatus, we have black boxes. If you can't pass gas in the cab of the apparatus without it being logged on some type of transponder and transmitted to our mobile equipment bureau. So it's amazing with all of the safeguards on a modern fire apparatus that we continually have these fatal accidents involving fire apparatus. In fact, I used to ride a tailboard and the side of a aerial ladder apparatus, just hanging on the side. I don't remember firefighters falling off or apparatus being involved in as many accidents as occur today, with one notable exception. The department I left in Illinois to come to Miami-Dade in the early 70s had a terrible accident, and it had to do with timing of a red light, where a gravel truck driver was hoping that the light was going to turn green, and the driver of the apparatus was hoping that the light would turn red for him, and it just turned out to be a disaster. Tammy, what I'd like to do is let's first of all introduce the other members of the panel can introduce themselves. So now that I've blown all that smoke your way there, Mr. Shakespeare Hovelman, would you tell just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go around the room here.
Yeah, thanks for the props. I appreciate it. Jason Hovelman, Fire Chief at the Florissant Valley Fire Protection District in North St. Louis County and co-owner of Engine House Training.
Great. Captain Mike?
Hi, Mike Dugan. I'm the same I was last month.
Same Mike Dugan?
Same Mike Dugan.
We're waiting for the new and improved model. What about this guy, Daryl Liggins?
How are you doing? Yep, same guy, Daryl Liggins, captain on an engine company in Oakland, California.
And you've been catching quite a bit of work lately, I understand, Daryl.
Well, I can't make them all. I wish I could make them all, but yeah, the city's been pretty active lately.
Okay, now I don't see, because we're using this phone, I don't see Sam Hiddle. But Sam, are you with us, brother?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Captain with Wichita Fire and Traditions Training Instructor, along with my friend Dan here. He's feeling under the weather, not very active today.
Okay. Is Dan with us today?
Ish.
Ish.
I've manipulated my background.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. All right. Do we got everybody covered?
Sheridan and Bobby.
Okay. Real good. Then Chief Sheridan.
Hi guys, Danny Sheridan. I'm with the New York City Fire Department, and I'm actually driving through the old South Bronx. I had some stuff to take care of today, and I'm actually coming over the Willis Avenue Bridge where it all started for me 34 years ago. And I'm going on light duty to the academy for the first time in 34 years. I've never been on light duty, so this is going to be all new to me until I heal up. And today's my wedding anniversary, so got to get home to the wife as well.
It's my wedding anniversary as well, Dan. My 14th anniversary today.
Congratulations.
Hey, can you do us a favor? If you catch a job driving through the South Bronx, can you take us all along?
I will.
Yes.
Daryl,
Hey, listen, Danny.
Danny,
Danny.
Daryl, tomorrow is my 48th wedding anniversary.
Yeah, I knew we were close.
Danny.
Yeah.
551 East 79th Street, second alarm.
I know. I'm not gonna buff it though. You want me to? I'll buff it if you want.
No.
I got to get
Okay.
to PT at 3:30.
Did we miss anybody?
Nope.
Okay, I think what we're going to do is, because we got a lot to talk. Well, Chief Halton, yes, we did miss Chief Halton. Would you like to introduce yourself just briefly, Chief?
I'm Chief Halton.
Okay, nice to know nice to know information, Chief Halton. Or is that guy on the interview once on you were being interviewed for a fire that occurred in Dubai, Chief Halston. I think it was Bobby Halston. But what I'd like to do now is to get us all in the mood here, focused on the topic at hand. Is Tammy, why don't you go ahead and run that first video for us? We'll cross our fingers and see if it works. And I think we could probably just talk through this thing because there's no sound on this first one. Tammy, if you have to.
Yeah, I have it, sir. I just cannot get the
Okay.
screen to share it. So give me one second there.
Okay, but don't fret. Don't worry. Not that big a deal.
Okay, are you seeing it now?
Yes, we are, Tammy. We're
Oh,
seeing.
yeah.
we're
We
seeing
see
your
the
screen.
selections.
We're seeing the
Okay.
selections.
Yes. Yeah. Go to silent 911 fire. Fire trucks crash.
I am playing it and it's not working.
Okay. Then let's try the Tiller accident.
Hey, Tammy,
Yep,
do you run multiple screens?
I do.
Yeah, you need to mirror your unmirror your, or sorry, mirror your screens. It's probably playing on your other screen.
Yeah, well, that's what I was trying to tell it to go to the other screen, but it's not cooperating. So hold on one second here.
Go in and mirror your two displays so they show the same screen. You won't have that problem.
All right, well, I'm going to stop sharing. You guys can keep discussing and give me a minute and see if I can get this fixed.
Yeah, and the other thing is, Tammy, there's more people watch this thing in the evening, the archive version that are watching right now.
I can fix that. I can fix it for that.
Sure. So I'm not going to worry about that. I'm not going to worry about that. And what I'd like to do now is have each of the panelists tell a most memorable fast driver story. I've got a ton of them. And most of them, the motivation for driving the apparatus at an excessive speed is a competition to see which company is going to arrive first. And you see where fire apparatus collide because they're not watching out for each other. When I was on engine 2, it was always watch out for engine 7. We're coming up to 79th Street and 27th Avenue. Watch out for 7. And then they're going to beat us in. I said, let them beat us in. Let them beat it. How many times you've been first in, spotted your apparatus in the wrong place, and the second due company gets water on the fire? We're not there as a competition. There's an advantage of not being first due. Things that right from the get-go, as an officer or acting in that position, you absolutely cannot tolerate, and that is excessive speed. The public is not going to give us a pass anymore. If we hurt or kill an innocent civilian, even though the accident is not our fault, if it involves excessive speed, they're going to know about it. There's a black box and they're going to know about it. And God help the next driver, engineer, and officer on this department that is involved in a serious apparatus accident. Man, Pete, did you tell them a little bit about the sequestering of the apparatus? when we have a serious accident, how quickly it is put on a low buoy and taken away.
Yeah, we actually try to do it in real time. As soon as we can get that apparatus out of the way, we move it out of the way. But what we do is we try to really emphasize and get the drivers to understand that when you have an accident, you're going to lose at least one of three things. You're going to lose time, you're going to lose money, and in some cases, you're going to lose life. So they need to think about that. And also, biggest of all, they're not going to be able to accomplish the objective. Whatever it is they're set out to do initially, that call, somebody else has to come and run that call. So we really communicate that to them. So when there's an accident, if there's a major accident, everyone tries to get it off the street as soon as possible. Now, one of the questions that I try to get drivers to think about is, okay, you had an accident today in this apparatus. When was your last one? Was it 9 months ago? Was it years ago? And some guys will tell you, well, you know, my last accident, regardless of how simple it might have been, was say 6 months ago. So I'll ask them, well, just by comparison, in your personal vehicle, in your POV, when was your last accident? Oh, I haven't had an accident in 15 plus years. Well, why is it in the apparatus you're having an accident? Oh, well, it's different. There's exposure, there's call volume, there's the tension of the shift, there's the stress of the call. Yeah, we understand that. But when the accident you have turns out to be what's referred to as preventable, something where you as the driver, you pretty much had 100% control over. And that's really hidden fixed objects. We still see too many of those. The thing is that if we, the crash review panel, say reviews about 20 accidents in a given session, almost, I'd say 16 of those 20 are with fixed objects. We're talking about hidden poles, fences, bay doors, bollards, anything that does not move, anything that was there before. So it's a lack of situational awareness. And drivers will tell you, yeah, I was tired, I just didn't know it. So we show it to them, and then we look at it and say, well, seeing it now, is there anything you would have done differently today than you did before? And usually they'll come up with some, yeah, you know, I could have done this, I could have been more defensive. So yeah, it's just the drivers having a different perspective on what it takes to be safe. And then Bill talked about speeding. You know, some guys in the beginning think it's a measure of their skill to show how fast they can drive that truck, when that's not the case. So again, speeding is still, in too many cases, a fact of why we have accidents.
Okay, Daryl, there has to have been a time in your career where you've had to tell a driver to slow down. I don't think there's a fire officer alive that hasn't had to, at one point or another, had to tell somebody to slow down. And sometimes it hurts their feelings. Go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah, for sure. I have a lot to share on this topic. I mean, most of our accidents involve non-emergency driving, backing, or what you'd call the squeeze through accident. So as a department, we had to really hammer down on backing. And now if an apparatus is backing, a pickup truck, a wildland rig, period, we have backers on everybody else is off the rig backing that apparatus. It's just been too much. And after any accident, those drivers have to go to an accident review board, and then we determine if it was a avoidable accident or unavoidable accident. Now, early in my career when I was a firefighter, I got a little bit of a heads up of, you know, how accidents can occur. I was in the back of a rig when we, we're trying to be first due to a reported fire that we would normally be second due, and had a collision with a car. Went up on two wheels. I didn't have my seatbelt on. I thought we were going over. We wiped out, I think, 8 cars and injured the driver at the intersection. And in my opinion, it could have been avoided by just slowing down. But our culture, like a lot, is fire speed and the speed of every other call. And my favorite drivers have treated every call and their apparatus speed and their method of driving is pretty steady all the time. So I don't want the fire speed to be radically different than everything else. And
Daryl, one of the best compliments I can give a driver, if Pete's the driver, Pete, I'm going to like you first time you drove for me, because you drive like an old lady and I like it.
And, and something Pete said that I was thinking about is that a lot of times the fault is completely pinned on the driver. And I understand that. But 2 days ago, we avoided hitting a pedestrian because the firefighter in the back noticed this person coming off the curb before we did and was able to say, like, hey, hold it, stop, and I had a probationary firefighter in the back and said, and this is why I don't want you guys on cell phones in the back of the rig. We all need to be paying attention to what's going on. There's too many moving parts. And so the driver could only see so much, but we do have a lot of other eyes. I try not to get on the computer too much or the iPads too much en route and really try and make sure I can focus on the safety of our driving and clearing intersections.
Daryl, the alarm office will say, Engine 2, did you get that message on the MCU? And my answer would be, if I could say it on the radio, hell no, I'm helping the driver drive. I'm not fixated on that mobile terminal. Ed Collet, can you talk specifically about the tanker accidents and what you have done in your working group to prevent it seems like a rash of fatal tanker accidents? Ed.
Well, actually, from what we've done, ours is really geared towards education, as far as getting people to slow down, understanding this isn't, a sports car. In fact, Paul Combs, my friend, just sent me one of Paul Combs's illustrations that hits it spot on. It's a tanker with a concrete block on top of it saying this isn't a sports car. And we have people that tend to even drive it and it feels the modern engineering. And I think that's where we have started to see some of the reduction in some of the incidents, because they have rollover protection that automatically slows the engine down when it senses it's tipping, anti-lock braking, tender retard on the engine, so you got that secondary braking system. I remember when I first started, we had a tanker, 3,000 gallons, didn't have an auxiliary braking system on it. There was a huge hill in our response district with a railroad track at the bottom. One of the senior guys said, if you're going down this hill and you see a train, jump out and we'll be getting a new tanker, because there's no way you're going to stop by the time you get down there with this. So the technology has evolved to the point. And the other thing I think people have started to do is the amount of water and the dynamics of that load. We now have better tank baffling. We have people getting actually manufactured tankers from, apparatus manufacturers, as opposed to going out, throwing a tank together, no baffles in it, not accounting for the weight difference, especially if you use old gasoline tankers. Gasoline water is 25% heavier than gasoline, and they still fill it to the top, no baffles in it. You take a unbaffled tank and you hit the brakes, that water is going to try to keep pushing you. The same when you're going around the corner, it's going to try to tip you over. So that's one thing we teach when we're going through loading and offloading. With a baffled tanker, you can leave some water left in the tank. If you have an unbaffled tanker, those either drive fully loaded or fully empty. There's no in between if you don't have baffles. So that's the other thing, that a lot of the area around us, if it's just a tanker, not because some places also have tanker engines. So the first due engine is carrying 2,500, 3,000 gallons. We actually run non-emergency on all tankers. That's my department's, our policy is non-emergency response in the tankers,
Yeah.
just because we shouldn't be going, 35 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, which is the speed limit in most cases, is about all we want to go, because our tanker's 1992-ish international with 3,000 gallons. So, we keep it slow so we're more in control of it. That's the big thing, control, know your vehicles, knows the driving dynamics of it, especially with looking at the tankers. With the tank so high, sometimes your center of gravity is even higher than on an engine or an aerial apparatus. So the dynamics are much different.
And I think you can say this with a high degree of accuracy and authority because you have a degree in mechanical engineering, correct? And you
Yes, I
are
do,
by
Bill.
career an engineer for a major company. So I think you bring a lot to the table because you are an engineer. That's one of the reasons we invited you. The other thing is I like your dogs too. Hopefully they'll have a cameo appearance one of these days. We got to get that Paul Combs cartoon, and when we put this thing together for later broadcasting, when it's archived, let's get that thing in there too, Ed. If you've got it, can you send it to us?
Yeah, I can.
Great. Okay, Sam Hiddle, what do you got for us? Oh, before that, I'm sorry. Thank you, Captain Mike. I want to give a shout out. We're past the halfway mark to our sponsor, Key. That is keyhose.com. You will find no better hose. And I know it because that's what our recruits use. And daily, it is being dragged across windowsills and asphalt and put in live fire scenarios. So they are, that's really put it to the torture test, and it does hold up. And as much, probably shouldn't say this because it probably violates our warranty on it, but you live in a hot climate, man. Your ultraviolet light is the nemesis of fire hose jackets and liners for that matter too. But that is something that it's laying out in a hot parking lot all day. Hey, we're gonna watch a video. Okay, let's see if we can watch this video. All right, now I think we can talk over this now, right?
Yeah, I hear you just fine.
Okay, great. Okay, what we're doing here is we're just showing a montage of a rash of different types of fire apparatus. That happened to be a tanker. We could have a whole nother discussion too, fellas, about the difference in safety between a custom-built cab, a purpose-built cab, and a commercial chassis. In fact, Ed, could you weigh in on that? Your experience with the construction of a custom-built cab and a commercial chassis and cab in terms of crash resistance.
Well, the pictures actually show a lot of it. I mean, you see the custom-built cabs supporting weight, just like there at that Detroit one. There's also a couple other ones I've seen through in different accidents I've seen where I like this one with the Raleigh tiller. The whole weight is supported. And if you look how the manufacturers actually test those, they'll put over 10,000 pounds. Off the top of my head, I forget the exact NFPA number, but that cab has to support at least 10,000 pounds of loading. Commercial cabs do not have to support that type of loading. So as you've seen some of these pictures here, the commercials type of cabs usually get crushed down. The windshield comes all the way down to the dashboard. I mean, the roof comes to the dashboard. But they don't have that same level of protection that the customs cabs have, which, a lot of people will get into arguments that, customs cabs are so much more expensive. But my argument is, how much is your firefighters worth when it comes right down to it? I can justify another $80,000 if that saves one life over a commercial cab by getting a custom like that.
Okay. Jason Hobelman, any thoughts, any experiences on this as being the chief of your department?
You know, you look at, you know, Pierce, E1, Sutphin, you know, all the major apparatus are building their own cabs, you know, and that whole structure. So what you're looking at when we're looking at commercial cab, and the true intent of a custom chassis and cab for a fire apparatus is to be a fire apparatus. You look at what we call a commercial cab or chassis, and that is your Internationals, your Freightliners, your Spartans, your West Stars. Those were actually initially built to be, you know, have dump truck beds put on them, have gasoline tankers, have all types of commercial use type of trucks built from that platform. And what a lot of places have done now to save costs is they will take that commercial cab, which could have been used to put, you know, a power company's bucket truck, build on that to get to the electric lines and do maintenance. Now you're putting a fire pump in it, you're putting the tank on it and the cabinetry and calling it a fire truck. So
exactly. I just wanted you to clear that up for all the audience, because, you know, some of the younger firefighters who may not have gone into a purchasing committee yet may have misunderstood that to mean, oh no, we've got to get every rig has to be custom built. But as long as you're buying from a reputable fire apparatus manufacturer, you know, you're anybody in the Rev Group or the Pierce Group or Rosenbauer or the list goes, you know, HME, KME, the list goes on and on. You're buying a custom built cab that meets the NFPA standard. As Ed mentioned, he's talking about when people retrofit a Freightliner to make their tanker, you know what I mean, because they can get, you know, because it's quote unquote, and I'll just say cheaper than a custom built cab from a fire apparatus company. You're cutting the wrong corner, and I agree with you completely, Ed. And no disrespect, the people from Freightliner are not building fire apparatus to roll over. They're a great corporation, and no disrespect at all meant to them, but they're not anticipating firefighters to be driving their apparatus the way we do. Seriously, the way we do sometimes because of the nature of our work. So thank you, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jason. I apologize.
No. That's a good point of clarification. Jason Hobelman, as a chief of department, have you had to take any measures to reduce your rate of accidents?
Yeah, and luckily for us, most of our accidents are they've been minor, but a lot of our neighbors have had some pretty significant accidents on the interstate. But there was a comment I want to just kind of allude to that relates a little bit to what Ed said about tankers not responding code 3. And we're pretty dense. We got a lot of stoplights, a lot of intersections, and something that we have moved to, and we've done it for a long time, but something we have to remind our officers of every now and again in their training is, you know, we'll shut down at a red light and wait for that light to turn. We found it's more beneficial, it saves time, and it eliminates pushing cars into traffic and putting our own apparatus at risk in a lot of those situations. And it's counterintuitive to what you're taught when you first get in, and you're running lights and sirens. You got to get there fast. But that's probably been one of the most important things that we've done as an agency to protect our people, but also the public at large.
Chief, I couldn't agree more. And, you know, it's like sometimes some apparatus officers and drivers are bullies. They are abusing their authority and their position. You got cars 4 deep in an intersection at a red light. Nobody's moving. What do you expect these drivers to do? Pull out in traffic? And you got a federal queue and an air horn going? Think of it's your mom. Think how she would be, how upset she would be. So I couldn't agree more with that concept. Sam Hiddle, would you like to weigh in a little bit here?
I'm working on the videos right now. Which one do you want to play first?
Okay, well, we already played one, and that worked out beautiful because we could talk right through it. Hey, let's go to Rotator 1, and then Pete's going to narrate.
All right. Give me 1 second here.
Oh, and guys, when you see rotator 1, you can eat your heart out, okay?
All right. Is that sharing?
We got that. There you go.
So you can
Okay.
see that.
All right.
Okay, so that's the rotator, that the heavy one. That's just about setting up to do what's called the alley dock. So they're going to do that probably in 2 attempts. Probably go forward a little bit more, and then back up in between these cones to simulate supposedly backing up into a backing only station bay.
Now, Pete, there's those first front 2 wheels.
Right, those are both steering axles. So it tends to crab as opposed to making a swing out turn. So that takes some getting used to. The drivers of these trucks actually have to time the turn a lot earlier in terms of starting to turn the steering wheel. Because you can see there, you've got 2 axles that do the steering in the front. So it looks like he's got it. It could actually keep coming back some more and be able to fit into that alley dock.
Now, you were saying that this course, you got a lot of land here, but you can somehow make this modular where this would be.
Yeah, this course is based on guidelines from NFPA 1002, also BFIS, and also the National Safety Council. Now, the course is made up of, we've got here 7 stations. We start with the straightaway. We've got something else called a diminishing clearance. We've got a confined space. We also have a lane change station. This is the alley dock that we're looking at right now. And you can see those 2 cones in the back. The objective is to get that first wheel there right in the center of these 2 cones to simulate that there's a wall in the back. We also do the serpentine, and we also do parallel parking, and then coming to a stop within a certain distance from the actual stop.
Sam, I think that was rotator 3, wasn't it? You want to try? Let's try more rotator 1.
Okay, let me give me 1 second here. Pull that up.
No, you're doing great, man. I really appreciate this.
And Bill, when you're saying rotator, that's the name of that rig. Can you clarify that?
That's the type of wrecker that it is.
Yeah, this truck here is by Dugan, and it's primarily a towing truck. It can lift, and it's very stable almost from any angle. Now, what we're looking at is we're seeing the driver setting up to go down what's called a diminishing clearance, which is ahead of him. Now, this has a lot of precision control. And some drivers will push back and say, well, why do I need to be so precise and controlled? Well, the thing is, if you can do it there, your sense of situational awareness, depth perception, knowing where your wheels are, you really get tuned into that. So out there in regular driving, you have that skill to go with you.
Okay, the term rotator comes from that boom rotates like a crane. It isn't just like a regular heavy-duty wrecker. You can rotate that thing and work off to the side. In fact, June 2019 cover of Fire Engineering has a picture of this rig being used. And you'll see that there are 2 trauma surgeons, 2 young lady trauma surgeons that were there with their buzz saws getting ready to amputate this poor guy's leg. And thanks to this apparatus here, contributed greatly to the guy saving this guy's leg. Yeah, so we got a pretty good idea with that. So that's why we call it a rotator. And it is a very, very difficult accident or apparatus to drive. Okay, you can cut that video. Pete, one of the stellar examples you have of investigating accidents has been the rash of accidents, guys, we've had with a tower ladder, an elevating platform, a mid-mount with a basket at the back, or a bucket, as you Northeastern guys like to call it, pulling out of the firehouse and smacking the side of the bay doorway with the basket. And Pete did some investigating, and he's going to tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we went out to the station and we talked to the drivers at the station and asked them what were some of the challenges they were having actually getting the truck into the bay or out of the bay. So initially, there was some construction going on at the front of the bay, so they were using the back to get in and out. They were using it as a back and only bay. So the turnout area was very limited. So coming out of the bay, they started to turn right too early. And as a result of the swing out, the monitor in the back kept hitting the bay column, the bay wall. So that happened repeatedly. Now you have relief drivers come in, you have overtime drivers come in, and based on the communication with the outgoing driver or with the officer, if they weren't mindful enough, invariably they'd end up hitting that bay wall. Now we've got some guys who drove even bigger trucks, but because of how challenging it was to get out of there, they kept hitting the wall. So we had to go there, look at do an assessment, make some recommendations. And now that bay is a pass-through bay, we've been able to reduce the number of accidents. Also, at the exit of the bay, we were able to extend the turnout area so that the truck could actually pull out some more, giving themselves an additional maybe 5 feet in the back before making that turn, so that the bucket could clear the bay wall.
Can you show that diagram? Just hold it up to the camera.
Well, this here is up the course.
Oh, that's the course.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, here, I'm going to hold it up. Sam, can you see that? Can you make sense of it? If not, I won't show it. Okay, it's looking kind of. You're looking like it's a little bit puzzled. No, you're muted again, Sam.
You want to play the tiller video real quick in case?
Yeah, let's play the tiller video.
Okay.
Watch as Raleigh's ladder 4 goes too fast around the corner, turning from Dawson Street to South Street downtown, flipping upside down.
Overturned, ladder 4.
That video captured by a bus, this angle captured by a red light camera.
3 firefighters on the ground. There appears to be 2 that are injured at this time.
Eyewitness News arrived on the scene July 10th, minutes after it happened. You can see some of the 4 firefighters being treated for minor injuries.
As it turned out, no life-threatening injuries at all, no broken bones. We were very, very, very fortunate.
And fortunate that the emergency they were responding to didn't need them after all. Fire Chief John McGrath says both a last-minute decision to turn and speed caused the crash.
Anything that causes an accident is too fast, but we're guesstimating that they were doing 25 to 30 miles an hour as they hit the turn. Depending on conditions, there's times when you have to go down to 5 miles an hour to negotiate a turn.
The truck is Raleigh's only tiller truck. With a second driver in the back, it's easier to maneuver the big fire rig through the tight streets of downtown. All the firefighters were buckled in. Now they're all back at work. The chief won't say if anyone was punished. He does believe the city will have to pay for a new truck. The price tag, $750,000. They're not sure how much insurance will cover. They'll make cuts to cover the rest.
As bad as it was, as bad as the damage was to the apparatus, you can rebuild apparatus. You can't rebuild people. So we're very, very grateful for that nobody was hurt.
And now they'll use this video
That's good, Sam.
all firefighters.
Would you explain how? I don't know how many other fire departments are is it the department or the county in general? All county agencies are self-insured?
I'm not sure about all county agencies, but I can speak to MDFR. Dade County is self-insured. So that's money that comes directly out of the county. We try to impress that upon drivers as well, because in the big circle of things, eventually that money is money that, if it could have gone into our pockets, it's going to go elsewhere. The other thing is from an exposure liability standpoint, again, the county being self-insured, it's just very expensive. And when guys get the big picture, they realize that if we're looking for some sort of an increase, some sort of cost of living adjustment or whatever, these accidents, we can keep it down, can actually influence that decision in the end.
We just saw a glimpse of Danny Sheridan driving his Bentley through the South Bronx, just a quick glimpse. I understand we have some questions from viewers, and my question to Chief Halton is, can we, if we do have these, can we go over a little bit?
Yeah. So Jim Fash said that the younger drivers not understanding the center of gravity with their truck they're driving, and then overweight rigs are also a problem when it comes to accidents. So I guess for our experts that are on, Ed, and perhaps you have some ideas about what's a great way to get younger drivers to understand center of gravity. And then Brad Hoff added that oftentimes the rigs become overweight because we put equipment that's really heavy, compartments that the rig may not have been designed to do that. So your thoughts on overweight rigs and how to train young drivers?
It's actually kind of funny you mentioned that, Chief. Actually, we had a training the other year, and one of the participants said it seemed like it used to be when they had a split 5-speed gearbox that someone had to know how to use a manual transmission. You only had the more experienced drivers that understood how the vehicles worked that were driving. Now with the automatic transmissions, we have a lot of the younger ones with less experience with heavier vehicles. So what we try to do is we emphasize, go out, look, how tall is this vehicle? Where is all the mass, which in the case of a tanker, where's all the water at? And it's up high in the vehicle, and just show them, look at that versus what your car is. How low is your car? Well, it handles a certain way because there's a smaller distance between your center of gravity and your center line of your axles. So it doesn't have the roll moment. Whereas this truck, we just show them, look how high it is. Look where all your weight is in the truck. And that affects not only side to side, but also front and rear, how it handles.
So Ed, if I could ask a question about your answer, and I'll admit up front, I am a manual preferred, just because I grew up, 3 on the column, 4 on the floor, now 5 speeds. But I always feel like I have more control over the vehicle I'm driving, and I can sense more about what the vehicle's experience. I know we have a trade-off there in weight carrying capability, and we have a trade-off in transmission life, because the automatics today are so advanced that they move through so many different iterations of gearing compared to a human being going through 5 or 6 gears. But are we trading off so I guess to my point, I apologize, to my point, are we trading off a level of safety and control for convenience and perhaps savings on maintenance and repair?
Well, I think right now, just because the way the market drivers are, it's very difficult to get manual transmissions even in the larger trucks. I mean, just look at the cars. If you go try to buy a car with a manual transmission, it's a special order. It used to be, the automatics were special order. And I think in the big, larger fire apparatus, and even in the commercial apparatus, they've went away from the manual transmissions and everything's automatic because of, like you stated, the robustness of the automatic transmission, along with all the electronics that are in the drivetrain are more geared to controlling the automatic transmissions now. I think
Ed,
it's just an evolution.
If you want to puzzle a younger person, mention the term double clutching. And gearing down is really tough because you got to get the engine, you get the same speed as the transmission. But I was weaned on a 1959 Ward LaFrance with a massive Waukesha gasoline engine that you had to double clutch. And
Jake brake.
Jake brake. What's the name of the company that makes it? Jacobson. Hey, I think, do we have, Mr. Hoff was, did he have another comment or a question that he wanted to share? You're muted again, Bobby.
Yes, Mr. Hoff. Mr. Hoff was talking about, interesting, governing. In other words, sorry guys, I hope I'm still there. But Mr. Hoff's question was about governing an apparatus. In other words, he was stating that their apparatus is set at 10 miles an hour over the maximum possible speed limit in their area. The problem with that is, and obviously it was pointed out by that great video out of Raleigh, they were in a 35 mile an hour zone. They probably were doing about, or maybe a 45 mile an hour zone. So they really weren't speeding. It was the speed that they went into the turn. And Phoenix experienced a similar thing. They rolled a brand new, I think it was one of those Bronto Skylifts. They had it on the street for about, I want to say less than a week. And they just were on a normal highway, but the grade was not enough to handle that vehicle's center of gravity and weight, and they rolled it. But as I recall, so I think that is probably a good way to keep vehicles from going way too fast. But the problem becomes when we travel on streets that are, below, say, 65 miles an hour, 75 miles an hour, then having a governed apparatus doesn't mean anything if you roll it at 45 miles an hour, and which can kill you just as easily, as Ed and our guests can attest to as they study these things. But any thoughts on that, Ed, or anyone else?
No, I'll add something, because we primarily use tillered trucks. I've seen that video before. I don't know the details of the investigation, but the overall speed of a tiller truck is one thing, but when you're making a corner and the tiller's turning out, it's like a whip, and you're really whipping that rear end around, and it's accelerating because of the, just the length of the vehicle. So it's really, the rear of the vehicle ends up traveling much faster because of the distance it's going around. So that's something you have to be real cautious of in a tiller. The other thing is, earlier I talked about, we're talking about the weight of a vehicle and kind of the distribution of the weight, but just the overall weight of the vehicle. When we were involved in our accident, there was one of the takeaways was nothing demonstrated the weight of the vehicle greater than being in that accident. I said we hit like 8 cars. It felt like we were not ever going to stop. Cars were bouncing off of the rig, and I could only imagine if it was a truck. So we have to really respect how heavy the vehicles we were driving are. My engineer was just sharing with me the other day, because we're teaching one of our new guys how to drive, is, hey, let's just go into a parking lot, and I want you to accelerate. I want you to decelerate hard. I want you to get a feel for how hard this can brake and how it's going to accelerate and everything in a parking lot before we take it out in the street. And I thought that was really good. I guess it's similar to EVOC testing that many people do. But and I guess my final point is, if we want to save time, there's very little time to be saved on the road when you're only traveling a mile or two. Very little time we can make up on the road. If we really want to save time, we have to get out of the firehouse fast. That's where a lot of that time is going to be saved. It's not going to be saved by driving faster.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Well, we're a little bit over time, but any final thoughts, Chief Hobelman, Jason?
Just quickly, there was a comment earlier about, and I think Brad brought it up in his comment about their policy states 10 miles over the speed limit. And I would encourage all chiefs and officers to consult with their counsel. We took that out of our policies and guidelines because they felt like it encouraged or gave permission to go that fast. And the laws are a little bit vague. Basically, you can do what you want until you cause harm. And at that point, you're going to be bound to whatever the state law is for any other vehicle. And so it's all about due regard and being aware of your surroundings and having those decisions made. So we took that language out. I'm not saying that it's right for everybody, but it was explained to us that it's not maybe the smartest thing to have when it comes to speed limits and how fast your people are quote unquote allowed to drive. So I would just check into it if you have that in your policies.
And again, I encourage our viewers to pick up a July edition of Fire Engineering and read the most excellent article on preparing a fire company for responding to fires, written by our brother here, Chief Jason Hovelman. Sam, anything else?
Yeah, I would just say I think sometimes the weight of the vehicles is kind of like Captain Liggins was referring to. We're not the ones that are going to get hurt in the accident, and so we're kind of the bigger apparatus on the road. And I think we kind of operate that way, almost like we're bullies of the road. We're not worried about ourselves getting hurt, which really goes back to a reflection of are we there for the citizens, or are we just entertaining ourselves?
Excellent point. Captain Mike Dugan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, drive safe. Think that your mother, your father, your kids are in that car next to you. Okay? Think about people you love, because whoever's in that car, somebody loves them and wants them to come home. Do not drive crazy, and we can talk about it. I would love to go over this more with things about speeding, and I would like to do another show on this topic about slowing down, about talking, because we really didn't get into the officers talking to their people about slowing down and how you have to be an officer and do that. So that's for another show. Thank you.
But, you know, you bring up a good point. Well, Sam did, or Daryl. We could have another program, and a lot of it would be getting out of the station fast. These guys that are dragging their feet, and we could have a whole show about that. But thanks very much, Captain Mike. Let me see. We've got we already took care of Daryl, and I don't know, Danny. Are you still driving your Bentley through the South Bronx? There he is.
I'm up in Putnam County, driving my Tesla.
Your Tesla?
Just a thought.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you talk about cutting your teeth. I drove a Mergens Deutsch 62 through the Sahara Desert. It's a double clutch. That was interesting. But you know, just to wrap it up real quick, situation a few years ago. I haven't the time anymore. I don't know if it was a year ago or 5 years ago, but we do this modified response. And basically what it is for all kinds of emergencies that are not fire, the first 2 units could go on a regular response. The rest of the units are supposed to go on a kind of we call it a modified response. And it's cut down accidents tremendously. And I think just from personal experience being in the front seat for 25 years as an officer and a chief, you have to understand what your roles are. I mean, there's no sense in driving like a bat out of hell for like a food on the stove or a lockout or some kind of whatever, you know. I mean, you just gotta, you know, risk versus reward, but you know, on the driving side of it, because you know, I worked in a squad, and we had one guy who called him the pilot, and you know, he can drive that car. He thought it was a race car, you know, and we were loaded down because we had hearse tools and airbags and all kinds of stuff, and we went through springs like water, you know. So you know, you have to just understand your rig, and you got to understand what your role is on the response. I mean, if you're third due, we've got it built in where we're supposed to adhere to the response ticket, you know. So if you're second due, you're not going to make any undue effort to beat the first 2 units in. And we, you know, generally where I've always worked, we respect that, and it works out where you know, the wheel is round, everyone gets a turn. So anyway, thanks for letting me have a moment.
And I read a reprint of your article on fireproof multiple dwellings. And the quotation, no matter how hard we try, we will never convince occupants to stay put in their apartments. So I think that was basically it, Danny. And I'm enjoying, or I'm encouraging everybody to take a look at the web. Actually, I think it was Firefighter Nation today, and take a look at that reprint. It's a great read. It's a quick read. And Chief Danny, I hope your back gets better. And brother, it's great to see you. Okay, I think we covered everybody here. I want to thank our sponsor once again, Key Hose. That's keyhose.com. Again, don't go cheap on your hose. Your hose line is your lifeline. And keep in mind that Key is very competitive when it comes to the large diameter hose as well. They offer both the rubber covered and fabric covered, depending upon your preference. So until next time, as our brother Mike Dugan said, let's slow down, take it slow. Let's stay safe. Let's stay healthy. And God bless you all.
Thank you.
Are we off?